Good morning, everyone. You all right? Yes. That music at the start taking me to flashbacks at 2 a.m. in Fabric last night. Did anyone try the ham last night, the man, Radio party, carving ham. That was very good. I like the ham. And thank you for coming this morning because, firstly, you had to get up early, right? And secondly, you needed a team of dogs and a sledge to get you through. It's the first time that we've had to do that. But welcome. We're here for the Ultimate Guide to Music Programming. I'm Nick Goodman. I'm your host today, and we've got a great session ahead of us to talk about all things music, okay? All things music. How do we get the right music strategy for our radio station? Will the 80s ever die? No. How many times can you play a song in one day, the same song? We'll answer these important questions, and to help us in our Ultimate Guide, we have the ultimate speaker lineup. We've got music programmer Leah Stonhill. We've got presenter and program producer on Greatest Hits Radio, Des Paul, and head of music for BBC Radio 1 and 1 Extra, Chris Price. As always, in the round room, this is an interactive session, so we welcome your views, your opinions from the floor. If you've got something to say, stick your hand up. We'll get a microphone to you. We've got microphone people standing by, ready to go. If you're on social media, hashtag RDE23, say something about the session, all that kind of stuff. All right, let's get into it. Let's get the presentation on. There's only occasional bits of audio and slides and things, so we're going to do a lot of talking. Occasionally, you guys might need to turn your heads around, but let's fire that up on the screen just so we've got it. There we go, it works. Okay, let's kick it off then. So, let's start with strategy. That's usually a good place to start. Leah, if you were starting a radio station tomorrow, what's the kind of first things you'd think about in terms of putting a music strategy together for your radio station?
Okay. So I guess everything starts with audience, always. Who are the people you're trying to reach? What do they like? How do they live? What are their habits? How often do they listen to the radio? Do they listen to the radio at the moment? All those things are your starting point. I think coming into a new station or starting from scratch, you want to know who they are. Do you want to keep those people? Do you want to grow that audience? Or do you want to kind of move away from that and attract different people? So I think music strategy has to always start with audience, and everything else will kind of grow from that. Is age still important? Because, we used to target radio stations on age demos, and that seems to be less important. It's more about lifestyle and attitude now. Chris, would you say?
Yeah, not for us. Age is everything.
Age is everything for Radio 1.
Yeah, I mean it's enshrined in our operating license. We are a radio station for young people, which is a weird. In 2023, it's a weird thing to put two things in the same sentence: radio station, young people.
Yeah.
But that's who we are. That's what we do. So it's the driving factor for us, no question. We're 15 to 24.
Yeah.
That's our demo.
And avoiding a radio station growing old with its audience as well. People who are followers of some of these things will have seen the positioning of BBC Radio 2 has come under a lot of criticism over the last kind of period because they're repositioning to make sure that they get younger people at the bottom end as well. So that's an important thing to consider where your radio station is going to be in a few years' time as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, Radio 2 is not my remit, so I'll leave that for Jeff and Helen to comment on. But I mean, for us. How do you do that? I mean, obviously music is a really key part of it. Our oldest listeners, or our oldest target listeners, were born in 1999. So as a general rule, we tend not to play music from before that time. Yeah. Do people in their late teens and early 20s listen to music from before 99? Absolutely, of course they do. Do they expect to hear it on Radio 1? Probably not so much.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Des, when you were a head of music as well, so before your current position, you've been head of music before, how often did you sit and say, actually, we need to just revisit the strategy? Is that an annual thing, or was it every few months you were having a crisis about your music position, or are you just kind of comfortable to let it evolve naturally?
Potentially every quarter.
Every quarter.
Yeah.
You'd sit down and have a little look and see how it's going.
I think it was part and parcel of when you get a new set of figures coming in and you want to look at the station as a whole, whether it's performing well. Even if it's doing very well, you still want to refine it and make it sharper.
Yeah.
And if it's not doing so well, obviously you need to revisit strategy from top to bottom. So,
have we got any heads of music in the room, or any program directors? Okay. Who does an annual review of their music? You know, put your hand up. Annual review, something like that. Okay, that's pretty good. All right. Anyone do 6-month review? 6-month review? Okay, 6-month review. All right. Okay, this is good. All right, just to get a sense of it. At Radio 1, Chris, you differ from many commercial stations, and we just want to put that in context of some of the things that we're talking about today. And you have slightly more of a place in British culture and the music of the UK particularly, and have a slightly broader view on strategy as well. So just to give you guys a flavour, if you're not familiar with the output of BBC Radio 1, you guys just crane your heads over your shoulders for 60 seconds, and we'll have a little look at this from BBC Radio 1.
5, 4, 3, Radio 2, Radio 1, go.
One more time.
Welcome to the exciting new sound of Radio 1.
We're gonna celebrate. Oh yeah, alright. Don't stop the dancing. One more time. We're gonna celebrate. Oh yeah. One more time.
Take the night I love real easy, and I know that you still wanna see me on the Sunday morning music real loud. Let me love you all the moon is still out.
You ready? One more time. More time. We're gonna celebrate. Oh yeah, alright. Don't stop the dancing. One more time. We're gonna celebrate. Oh yeah, stop the dancing. One more time. One more time.
Did you get a shout out?
I got a shout out, yes, from Adele.
See, I don't think it matters who you are. A shout out on Radio 1 is still great.
One more time.
There you go, by royal approval. So music is really at the heart of what Radio 1 is.
Yeah.
It's in its DNA, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. That video we make a kind of sizzle every year. I'm sure loads of people here do. That one was actually made last year for the centenary of the BBC. Radio 1's actually only existed since 1967, but you know it's been a part of people's lives for 50 plus years. And I guess it's really weird actually seeing that now, because the sort of the legacy piece for Radio 1 really leaps out at you, and a big part of my role is making sure that sizzle reel looks great next year, the year after, and in 2073. You know, it's that important. And you know, when you step into this role, you are it's a kind of stewardship. It's a custodial role, and you're sort of trying to look after this very precious cultural institution for future generations.
But you think of your position as head of music as more than just looking at rotations and categories. It's more about what music means to young people and culture as well. Is that correct to say?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the very fortunate position of having a team of people that can think about rotations and categories. I find it incredibly boring.
We will be talking about those things later. Don't worry. That's okay. We got slides on that.
Nick sent me an email, or sent all of us an email. So we're going to talk about this. We want to talk about universes and categories and rotations. I'm like, I don't want to talk about any of that stuff. It's so boring, because it's just not stuff I think about day to day.
You have people to think about that for you.
I mean, we think the stuff I'm, I guess, a bit more focused on is, you know, are we making the right relationships with the right artists for the future? Are we elevating female artists? Are we breaking British artists on the global on the global stage?
Yeah.
Those are the things that when we go into the Radio 1 playlist meeting on a Tuesday afternoon, which will be I'm not going to be there, not chairing it today, but when the playlist meeting starts this afternoon, those are the things that we think about first and foremost.
Okay. All right, we are gonna get into universe and rotations and categories and all sorts of things. Let's talk a little bit about formats. Leah, there's lots of different formats you can have. There seems to be a limitless supply of new formats. The balance between a mainstream format which will get you enough audience versus a niche format which is quite deep but also not mass appeal. You know, can you comment on that kind of situation at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, obviously sub-brands are huge at the moment, and I think that when they exist alongside a flagship, they work really effectively because they're part of a wider ecosystem. So, for example, my station was Radio X. I left very recently, actually. I've recently moved on to a different role, but I've been programming Radio X for 7 years, and that's part of a wider company called Global, which is lots of different stations that serve different audiences, and all those stations, pretty much, bar a couple, now have sub-brands, so that whether they're decade-led or mood-led or, you know, different versions for a similar audience, but not the same audience. And I think the thing to be mindful of there is not cannibalizing your audience too much.
Okay, that's interesting. So a sub-brand should be separate and distinct from your main brand, so you don't just move listeners from one to the other, because that's pointless, right?
Yeah, and in commercial radio, obviously, your goal is to have as many listeners as possible because you're trying to, you know, make money.
Yeah.
So if you've got people who kind of like your station, but actually they tend to deviate more to DSPs more because they're not quite getting what they want from your station, those numbers that you can broaden out into are limitless, really, because there's something for everyone. So if you've got brands, niche brands that kind of exist within an ecosystem, I think that works really well.
We've got Magic on the screen here. Magic is owned by Bauer in the UK. They've got some sub-brands as well. Des, you're also a presenter on Magic Soul.
I am.
Okay. It plays the best of soul and Motown, really.
Soul,
it's kind of retro.
Yeah, I mean, the strap line is soul and Motown. It does go a bit further than that, but it's generally black music with a heritage bias.
And do you think niche formats have that kind of, how niche can you go? Because we've got Magic at the Musicals, which only plays music from West End shows and Broadway. If you're into that, fantastic. Out of all of those on the screen, it's probably the smallest. How small would you go on a niche?
Not much smaller than that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So I think the thing is, as Leah's saying, with these brand extensions, if you like, you're keeping the audience within the family. So long there's crossover, I think, between what's happening with that niche station and
sexy.
It's just because we're talking about Magic Soul. This
let's get the mood lighting going on. Okay.
But yeah, I think providing there is some commonality between those stations, that is important, because otherwise you're just moving audiences completely away to a different place. You don't want to do that. So if you look at Soul and what we play on there, there's a decent percentage of that you'll hear throughout the day on the main Magic station.
Has anyone in the room got a really good, innovative format that is quite niche, that is a brand extension or something they can share with us? Matt Deegan down here. Can we get a microphone? Now, you've got to run. Come on. We've only got 40 minutes. Let's go. You're young and fit. Thank you.
Hi, Nick. So I run a kids radio station called Fun Kids, which is, you could say it's pretty niche to start with, but we've got some spin-offs. And Fun Kids Naps is my favourite one.
Fun Kids Naps,
Fun Kids
taking
Naps.
a little sleep.
Yeah. A station that sends listeners to sleep. Good for hours. Great for hours.
Share is fantastic.
But it does a good job of fulfilling a need.
Okay.
And so if people want to switch off from a very upbeat Fun Kids, because their kids are going to sleep and they've got a solution to that, they can flip over to that.
That's really good. Fulfilling a need. Have the niche station fulfilling a need. I like that a lot. Okay. Any gaps in the markets for interesting new formats? If you were free from the BBC and you could launch anything, I'm not saying this is a Radio 1 thing, but what would you launch, Chris?
I don't know, come back to me on that.
Okay, all right.
I'm bowled over by Fun Kid Naps.
Okay. All right, let's move on and talk a bit about research. We're just going to touch on this. There is a whole session. If you're a research geek and you love the research, there's a whole session on that at 11:10, track 4. A bit on it now, though. When you were head of music at Radio X, was research a really significant part of what you did?
Yes, it became... when I first started, it was pretty much everything. Music research was the driver for a lot of our decision making in playlist and outside of playlist. As time went on, though, I think because radio, as time moves on, is operating in a different environment with different competitors. So now music research is part of a much wider set of information that we're looking at to make decisions.
Yeah, okay. Fan of research? When you sit there putting together, and we're going to talk about your show that you present and produce, do you sit there looking at a spreadsheet of numbers as to what song tests well for the top of hour?
Burn.
Or not?
All about burn.
All about the burn, is
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
Oh,
No, it's
okay.
not for me.
Okay.
No. And, we worked together at MTV, and we were running 11 channels, of which 2 were sort of mainstream, and then the others were niche. And we were going into playlists with all our research every week, which was a lot of paper.
Yeah.
And this is 18 years ago. And I think we have moved on. The way that audiences consume music have moved on. The relationship between what's the best way of describing it? The relationship, I think, between the dynamic between who's telling who what to play has changed, and that all features in how research is, how useful research is.
Who does research at their radio stations? In just as a snap study here, who does research at your radio stations? Okay, a lot of research. Chris, do you do research at BBC Radio 1?
We have stopped doing research, or we've stopped doing research in the old way, like the equivalent of what we used to call out research. We don't do that anymore.
Okay.
Partly because we used it in a slightly different way anyway. We're a new music station, so research is not really helpful for helping you decide what to put on the playlist. It was really just a kind of a check on whether or not our recurrents and golds were actually doing the job that they were supposed to do, which is, of course, help us bring the new stuff through.
Yeah.
So, as Des says, the relationship between, the kind of the gatekeepers putting music out there and listeners kind of dutifully lapping it up, that's completely changed. Obviously, we're awash with data now from Shazam to streaming.
Yeah, what do you look at? So Shazam, like Spotify charts, things like that, or?
All of that stuff comes into it. We'll get onto playlist in a minute, I hope, but the single most important data point for me in making a playlist decision is kind of an internal one. It's like, how many times have Radio 1 specialist or daytime presenters already played this song? Like, is there a connection with this song and this artist inside the station? So we're not sort of looking out into the world and saying, well, that's Shazamming really well, let's put that on our radio station, or that's streaming like mad. Those are data points that we use to sort of check our decision making rather than inform it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, this is the bit you're going to love now. We're going to talk a little bit about universe and categories and stuff like that. I thought I'd do some of my own research. So on the screen now, you will see, this is from the UK, 4 radio stations, Radio 2, Radio 1, Greatest Hits Radio, and Capital. The number of titles, this is taken from an average week, is the different number of songs that they were playing in that week, right? So Radio 2 played almost 1,400 songs, and their most played song was played 21 times. So you can see, is that, for Radio 1, is that about right? Just over 1,000 titles a week?
1,200 is, so that's slightly low, actually, than an average week.
It could be slightly more than that, yeah.
We play about 12,000 unique songs every year, roughly, slightly over 1,000 a week, which is, incidentally, about the same number of songs as unique songs that Capital plays in an entire year. We say we play the same number of songs in a week as Capital plays in a year. Okay, you can see them down at the bottom. They're only playing about 300 songs, the most played 62 a week. I thought I would compare this to a US comparison because that's kind of fun as well. Let's look at this, some big stations, so Coast and Light out of New York, Z100, 315 songs in the week. The most played, 115 times. We'll come on to that in a moment. And then K-Earth 101, 220. This is a classic hit station that plays only 229 songs. Wow. We've got Sean Ross here, who's an American format expert. Can we get a mic to Sean? Okay, okay, come on. They're now edging, they're facing off. Who's going to provide the mic? Is it you? Is it me? It's you! He's over here. There we go. Fantastic. It does help if I tell you who you're giving it to.
Morning.
Yeah. Just comment on a little bit of the American thing there, because a classic hit station only playing 229 songs in a week.
K-Earth is the extreme one.
Yeah.
Although people are starting to copy them. They're in Los Angeles with a lot of cume, with a lot of audience. They have metered measurement, and if you turn on the radio, they want you to have "Don't Stop Believing" in the first 10 minutes.
That's the deal.
I have talked to their program director, and he feels you will be disappointed if you don't get "Every Breath You Take" or "We Are the Champions" in 10 minutes.
I checked. Their most played song for this data was Queen and David Bowie, "Under Pressure," and they're playing these 3 times a day.
Yeah, sometimes it's "Take on Me," sometimes it's 4 times.
There you go. "Take on Me" 4 times a day. Come on. Okay, let's go back quickly to the. Any comments on any of that? Anyone? All look fine to you? Let's go back to the 115 one. This will give music schedulers nightmares, okay? Let's have a look and see what it looks like. Oh, yes, look at that. So you can see they played Miley Cyrus "Flowers" in most hours, and sometimes it was twice an hour. Just in case you haven't got enough Miley Cyrus "Flowers," sometimes it was twice an hour. Chris, comment on that. You wouldn't play a song every hour on Radio 1, would you?
It does slightly give me nightmares. Des and I, back when we were working at MTV, used to get very excited over beautiful diagonal lines.
Oh, yes, the diagonal lines. We like diagonal lines.
It just looks like a horrible word search gone really badly wrong, doesn't it?
It does. But it does very well as a radio station. Again, different market and all that kind of stuff, and it's fulfilling a need for the audience there. Wow, okay. Let's move on to scheduling. Leah, what makes the perfect hour of music? When you're looking at an hour of music, and you were there at Radio X, perhaps, what would you want in your perfect hour of music?
I think, first of all, it's important to say that a perfect hour of music on Radio X would look very different to a perfect hour of music on Radio 1, because they're different audiences. They want different things from that hour. So again, it always comes back to, what does your listener want to hear within an hour's worth of listening? For us, I mean, Radio X is predominantly a catalogue station, and it's genre-led. So they play predominantly rock, indie, alternative music.
Rock and indie and alternative.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's where you start.
Yeah.
You don't want to be playing anything that's not that.
Yeah.
But also, you've got to think about what people, the different eras of music, the different decades, how you kind of move through those throughout an hour. So you don't get clumps of things. You don't get a load of pop punk all in a row for 20 minutes and then an ad break. Because if someone tunes in during that 20 minutes, they're like, oh, this is a pop punk station. They're not getting a full picture of what the station is.
So that kind of full picture within a slice of 20-minute chunk, and you say, well, this is what the station represents. We've got, this is, hang on a minute. Well, hold on a minute. That one. Oh, we're going to do playlist in a minute. We'll come back to that then. We're going to play a little bit of, this is Izzy, who is a presenter on Radio X, right? And we're going to play a little bit of Top of Hour. So this is her introducing the Top of Hour, and then we're going to have a look at the songs through that hour.
This is Radio X.
From Global.
Get into the music.
Radio X.
We are on the doorstep of spring now. I'm excited. It feels like good things are coming. Wednesday, the 1st of March, Izzy Panias on Radio X at 3 o'clock. We're trying to get through Wednesday afternoon. The only way we know how is some massive tracks. Take Your Face Off, Foo Fighters come in. First, though, Linkin Park.
Tired of being what you want me to be.
Okay, so she kicks it off with Linkin Park. Just say you didn't program this hour, so this is not your handiwork, but I've put an hour up on the screen so you could see what this hour of music was. Maybe just comment a little bit on that hour of music?
Yeah, okay, so the first thing to point out is obviously there are ad breaks in this music, and that's actually quite important in terms of where the breaks are in the listening, and also where the links are. So she's obviously started with Linkin Park, which for our audience is an incredibly high-scoring song. So really, really familiar. Everyone knows it who listens to the station, and doesn't really tend to burn. Just has always consistently had amazing research results. So we'd always try and kick off an hour with a song like that. And then you can see you're kind of moving through different decades. So that's how we kind of carve up the catalogue
Right, so you've got some 90s
It's different.
in there.
Yeah, it's different for different stations, but for us, we organise our music into decades. So you start with a noughties, then you're into a 90s, and then she would do a link after that into what we would call a current, which is a, in inverted commas, new song.
Yeah, so that'd be the Noel Gallagher
Noel
one,
Gallagher,
perhaps. Yeah. Okay.
And then back to a noughties, and then that's kind of a Spice 90s, the Celebrity Skin from Hull.
Yeah.
So in that 20, and then you'd have an ad break. So in that 20 minutes of music, you've got a cross-section of the catalogue. And you've got links in the right places so that you're selling the song that's least familiar, and you've protected it either side with two very, very familiar songs.
Protect your unfamiliar songs with two really good ones on either side, which is it's always a great thing to do. Did you listen to that? Nice. Is that your bag? Yeah.
We actually, as a counterpoint to that, we just do everything exactly in the opposite way around.
Okay.
Just, break all the rules.
This is good.
We're a new music station, so we play new music in top of hours. We play new music out of trails, which obviously we don't have ads, but we think of trails in the same way that commercial music thinks of ad breaks. We play new music out of trails because, I mean, and when I say new music, I'm not talking about like a brand new C-list thing, but I'm talking about playlist music that's only been rotated for a matter of weeks.
Let's go back then, because I skipped over this. Let's just talk about playlists, because that's very much your thing. There are lots of different ways of doing playlists. There's no right and wrong answer to this. Talk about how BBC Radio 1 you do a playlist. You have how many people are in the playlist meeting firstly?
Usually 12 or 13.
12 or 13
in the room.
Okay, and these are producers and
we have a cross section of producers from evening shows, specialist shows. So I have kind of genre experts in there. I'll have a dance expert. I'll have a rock and indie expert in the room. We always make sure that the breakfast show is in the room.
Hang on, let me just pick up on that point. You make sure the breakfast show is represented in the room in the playlist meeting.
The producer of the breakfast show, because it's really, really important to us that the breakfast show, obviously the presenter of the breakfast show is behind the music, that they are invested in the decision making, so that they're selling the music that we collectively have decided to rotate.
Yeah.
I guess one thing that's new in the last 5 or 6 years that I've been doing the job is we have sort of platform experts as well. So I have a representative from the Radio 1 social team who can bring a bit of TikTok expertise into the room. So whilst we're not sort of sitting there poring over TikTok data, I've got someone who knows those numbers inside out. They know that 200,000 creations on a song that's been in the marketplace for 2 weeks is a really good result in that particular genre. So it's a long meeting.
How many hours? That sounds like painful meeting. That
it's usually about 3 hours.
Okay.
On a Tuesday afternoon.
Okay.
And we add 6 or 7 songs.
Okay, and we'll
every week.
have. In fact, let's have a look at those now. This is the current Radio 1 playlist. I know it's small, and we're all getting old with the glasses and all that. This is the current Radio 1 playlist. I can see brand new additions straight onto the A-list this week for Ed Sheeran's new song, Eyes Closed. Do you often put stuff straight onto A's or not, or is that an exception?
We do, yeah, more and more these days. Gone are the days where you develop an Ed Sheeran song through the C-list and the B-list. It's
Ed Sheeran.
We're in the streaming era, we're in the day and date era.
Yeah.
Nobody's waiting for us to develop Ed Sheeran to 25 plays. We'll just play that 25 times next week. I mean, just a few things to call out here. It's Tuesday. If I were chairing the playlist meeting this afternoon, some of the things that I would probably call out to the team as we're going into the meeting. I'm looking at that, and I know that 52% of the songs on that playlist are by female artists. I know that 19% of them are on independent labels, so I'm high-fiving myself for supporting female artists, but I'm slightly off the boil in terms of supporting the independent artist and label community. I know that 60% of those artists are British, so we're fulfilling our remit to break British artists. And then just, I also look at how distinctive we are compared with the marketplace generally. So I think
that's very different to Capital.
So I'll look at the number of songs on our playlist which are in the top 20 of the airplay chart.
Yeah.
At the moment, 10 of those songs are in the top 20 of the airplay chart. And if I go much higher than half, I know that I'm not distinctive enough from the market.
Yeah.
Same with the official chart. There are 42 songs on that playlist, and I'll look at how many of our songs are in the official top 40.
Yeah.
At the moment, I think it's 26.
Okay.
So we are 50% distinct from the
yeah,
market,
okay.
and if we rise too much above that, I mean, there's a couple of reasons for that. There's obviously we want to play music that is distinct from the market, but also we're moving much more quickly than the chart. Like if you actually look at the top 40 at the moment, there's probably only about 3 songs in the top 40 that Radio 1 hasn't played. It's just that we've played them and moved on.
Move
from
them on
a long
quicker.
time
Okay,
ago.
got it. If you got any questions, by the way, at any point, put your hand up. If you want to interrogate Chris about the Radio 1 playlist, now is your opportunity to do so. Just raise your hand and we've got a question. We've instantly got questions. I knew I should have asked earlier. Okay, tell everyone who you are and...
Hi, I'm Thomas Geiger from Pure Jingles and a Dutch radio guy before that. Do you always have the same number of songs in each category, A, B, and C, as to keep rotations in a certain, ratio?
90% of the time we do. We have 15 A lists, 15 B lists, and 12 C lists. Every now and again, we run under. If there's a bit of a dry patch, I would rather just play fewer songs than fill spaces with suboptimal, substandard music. And actually, we're in a bit of a dry patch at the moment, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, most of the time, we pretty much stick to that.
Okay, we're gonna jump on from this. We're not gonna listen to Izzy again. She's very good, but we've done her, so you'll have a brief burst of her. There we go. And there's the playlist. Okay, we're gonna move on a little bit. I just want to ask Des, what do presenters? Because you have a kind of foot in both camps in a way, yeah. What do presenters love and hate about a music log? When you see your music log, what do you go, oh no? And what do you go, oh great?
I don't present daily anymore. I should make that clear. On a CHR station. Magic Soul is a heritage station. But I would say that when you look at a log from my presenting days in CHR, I'd be like, oh. Because of playing the same records. It's repetition, I think, that presenters struggle with. You
should work on Z100 then.
But yeah, exactly, yeah. I think probably the reason for that as a presenter is you know that you will probably have to create some content around that title, and if you've done it 10 times already that week, you're conscious that you don't want to be repeating yourself and be repetitive, and coming out with the same link. So that's probably a frustration. But then on the flip side of that, the good stuff is when you see a track that you really like, that you know you're going to sell, whether it's new music or Spice track or something like that.
Okay. Have we got any other... Dennis Audich is here. Can we get a microphone to Dennis? He's a morning show presenter in Slovenia's #1 station. As a presenter, what do you like and what do you hate about when you see the music in the morning?
You ask me because I hate the music that we play. 90% of the music that it's every morning. It's the same shit. I hate. I hate hearing Adele. I don't know. And
so if Adele Hello is at the top of hour, that's not going to put you in the good mood.
I don't care. I just do my stuff. I just do the content that we have. I do the fun stuff, and I really don't care anymore of what we play.
There you go. A refreshingly honest appraisal.
That was basically what I was saying. But
absolutely.
In different words.
No, I mean it's true. Often. Yeah, we got we got the head of music now. Oh no, this is a nightmare. We're going to run out of time.
And I also don't love what we're saying about the music. So
okay, we're going to move on. We're going to talk about your show, Des, because you present a show on a Friday and soon to be Saturday night as well.
Correct. Yep.
Greatest Hits Radio is from Bauer. It's one of the great successes they've had over the last few years growing that brand, and it's a fantastic. They've got some great talent on there. Des does a Friday and Saturday night show. Tell us a little bit about the program first, very briefly.
So Friday and Saturday nights, it's Greatest Hits Radio is, as you can see there, 70s, 80s, and 90s. That's my sort of remit in terms of a timeline. The music I play is funk, disco and soul, so we sort of follow a pattern of how that music has evolved over time, and then to the 90s with some well-known club tracks.
Okay, let's have a little listen to the top of hour.
Fellas, I'm ready to get up and do my thing.
Now.
Des Paul. He's the greatest thing on. Too busy thinking about my problem. Sensation. She's a super freak. It's such a good vibration.
Rhythm of the night. Rhythm of the night.
Greatest Hits Radio.
Thank you, Martin Kemp. I'm Des Paul, and this is
Don't
Rhythm
worry,
of
we
the
haven't
Night.
got the whole length.
Yeah, don't
okay,
worry.
that's all right. Let's take a typical. This is an hour that we grabbed. Just talk us through briefly how you put this hour of music together.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
soul and funk, and talk us about it, Des.
Okay, so this is the second hour of the show, which opens up with a feature. We've got two features in the show. They're very simple. This is the 11 p.m. hour on a Friday night, and the first song is from a feature called Back to My Roots. And the idea of that is that listeners write in or email us with suggestions of songs to play that take them back, because Greatest Hits is really a nostalgia-based good time station.
Yeah.
And my thing with this show is thinking about, as Leah was saying, it all starts with audience for all of us. What are they doing on a Friday night? You know, the age range that I'm talking to are significantly older, but they will have had big weekends. We want to take people back who've had a busy week at work, whatever it might be. So it's a feel-good factor. So in this hour, the first song is a request. The second one is basically something that's well-known, and then it's, again, as Leah was mentioning earlier, protecting songs that people may not be that familiar with. So the Carl Carlton, She's a Bad Mama Jammer, you won't hear in daytime on Greatest Hits Radio. But the idea is that you'll listen to it and go, oh, I remember that track,
Yeah.
you know, but we've sandwiched it between stuff that people will be familiar
So
with.
there's a couple of Spice tracks in there.
Yeah.
BB&Q Band, probably again unfamiliar to many people.
So just to explain where we're going with the BB&Q Band, it's a very radio-friendly track, and then that's taking you into the midnight hour. The midnight hour has 10 songs back-to-back. We package that up as the midnight master cuts, and we say we go a little bit deeper. So that's kind of leading you into that.
And this is a hand-built show. You literally sit in there, and it's not a log as such. You just build it by hand.
I basically have 500 songs. They're broken down into 4 categories. I have a clock that I work from a sort of ABC list. We start with a blank sheet of paper every week. I speak to the producer there to find out whether there's anything we need to be representing, and then we look at things like calendar moments. So last week, for example, we had Shaka Khan's 70th birthday, George Benson's 80th birthday, and Diana Ross's birthday.
Okay,
so straight
so
away,
lots
we've
of
got
opportunities
artists
there.
that we can
There's
put into the mix.
some non-kind of core songs in there. Leah, do you feel comfortable in a music log kind of featuring those spice tracks, those kind of moments which are not the best tested songs, but they add something to the dynamic of the radio station and the log?
Yes, definitely, and I think they're important. They kind of give those moments of relief from the songs that the audience are hearing all the time. At X, even the spice tracks are incredibly high testing. We're very lucky to have a very well-tested catalogue of music that's quite rich. So we're never really concerned about them. It's just where you put them and making sure you're not getting a whole load of them all at once.
Because I'm a big fan of breaking the pattern of predictability, because I think some radio stations can be very predictable. So breaking the pattern of predictability in your music programming is important. We're up against time, so we're gonna scooch on from this, and I just want to talk a little bit about music in a live form and culture and all of that. Radio 1 does a lot of live music, because if you do that kind of stuff on your radio station, it says something about who you are. So tell us about live music and Big Weekend and all that kind of thing.
All right, cool. Yeah, so Radio 1's Big Weekend is our sort of flagship live event of the year. It's a kind of roaming music festival which goes to different cities every year, 80,000 people across 3 days. And, you know, it's sort of... it's right at the heart of what we do. You know, I'm booking artists, 36 artists across 2 stages, across 2 days. There are other stages that I don't book, but that's 36 artists who we're committing to playing. Like, you know, if I'm going to put Wet Leg on the main stage of Radio 1's Big Weekend, we're committing to making those songs and that artist as famous as possible.
So this is the lineup for coming up in May. You've just announced these acts. So
this.
Saturday, headliners, 1975 Jonas Brothers, Sunday Lewis Capaldi, and Wet Leg as well. And that's very different to like Capital's Summertime Ball and things like that.
Yeah, so our lineup obviously helps us to really, you know, say what kind of radio station we are. You know, this is an amazing piece of marketing that we'll put into the world and say, you know, this is the kind of thing you can expect to hear on Radio 1, but also we're the kind of radio station that is going to give Wet Leg their first ever headline slot. We're going to bring Lewis Capaldi back to Scotland and show everyone an amazing time.
Yeah.
And you know, live music is so important. And also, you know, I just wanted to say, it's a real point of difference and point of kind of creative competitive advantage for radio over streaming. We've done some quite innovative things with live music over the last few years, including debuting brand new music live on the radio before anyone's heard the recorded version. So for more or less all the time that I've been at Radio 1, I've been trying to find some very brave artists who will come in and play their brand new song live on the radio before anyone's heard the recorded music.
So the live music says something about your radio
station.
station.
I want Matty from the 1975 to come in, as he did a few years ago, and say, Annie Mac, I've got some new music to play you. And the next thing you hear is the strum of a guitar, not somebody pressing play on a piece of recorded music.
That's exciting.
Sam Smith recently came in and debuted their brand new song, Unholy, live as a live hottest record in the world on Clara. And you saw what happened with that.
Time is against us. We're going to wrap up with some final thoughts, and we might have time for a very quick question. Which is better at programming music, AI or a person?
Imagine if I said AI.
That would be...
As a music programmer, no. Obviously, you have to have...
people with ears.
Yes, and just cultural knowledge as well, and genre knowledge and audience knowledge. And there's so many aspects of it. It's not just about listening to a song and saying, that's a good song.
Yeah.
It's so much more than that. But as human beings, we're able to compute that.
Jobs are somewhat safe in this room. We are up against time. I can sneak in a question because we want, if anyone's got a question, you can. Yes, we've got one over there. Let's get the microphone over there. This better be good because it's the final contribution. No pressure. Here we go. Who are you? Who are you?
No, I'm quite. My name is Ursula Hofmeister. I'm from Public Radio Austria.
Great.
And I'm quite interested in the burn factor experience with your head because we saw some really narrow rotations, and I really wanted to ask, when do you think is it enough for a title? So if I have Miley Cyrus every hour, for how long can I do that?
When is enough? Anyone want to take that?
I mean, those rotations, they're clearly not worried about burn, are they? They're not. It's quite a short-term programming strategy, if you ask me. But back when we used music research, burn was probably the final thing to go. Like it was the one thing that the one piece of information that we missed the most when we stopped using it. And it is much more of a process of feel and just kind of getting feedback directly from our listeners and sometimes via our presenters. Obviously, especially as a new music station, our recurrence and our silvers and golds are so important to us because we're trying to break new songs. And if we burn the old ones, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
So.
Burn the old ones, you're in trouble. Okay. We could talk for hours on this stuff, but unfortunately time is against us. I would love you all to show your appreciation and thank this fantastic panel of Des and Chris and Leah. I'm Nick Goodman. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you. Thank you very much.